The construction bay was enormous. It had been built during the early days of human space expansion to assemble colony ships. Now it served a different purpose. Jake stood on a viewing platform and watched as massive robotic arms moved sections of salvaged hull into position. Sparks flew from welding torches as workers in spacesuits connected pieces that were never meant to fit together. Linda Hayes stood beside him, holding a datapad and shouting orders into her communication headset. No. That section goes on the port side, not starboard. And someone tell Engineering Team 3 that they cannot just weld quantum steel directly to titanium. It needs a buffer layer, or the molecular structures will reject each other. Jake watched as the workers repositioned the hull section. How bad is it really? Give me the truth. Linda stopped shouting for a moment and looked at her datapad. Honestly, this should not work. We are violating every principle of ship design that exists. Different metals with different heat tolerances. Power systems that use incompatible energy frequencies. Computer systems that literally speak different mathematical languages. But you know what? I think we can make it work anyway. The frame of the ship was taking shape. They had started with the skeleton of a destroyed Council battle cruiser. The quantum steel frame was still intact, even though everything else had been blown apart. Quantum steel was incredibly strong and could handle enormous stress. It was the perfect foundation, but everything else was pure improvisation. The hull armor came from 6 different species. Velcrin ablative plates that dispersed energy weapons, thorian reactive armor that exploded outward when hit, human titanium from old mining ships, even some ceramic panels from a species called the Zenith Confederacy. None of it matched. The ship looked like a patchwork quilt of different colors and textures. It looks terrible, Kate said when she saw it for the first time. Like someone built a ship out of random parts from a junk pile. Carl laughed. That is exactly what we did. But you know what is funny? Look at this sensor analysis. He showed her his datapad. Velcrin sensors read this hull as an asteroid because of the thorian armor. Council sensors cannot classify it at all because the signature is too confused. We accidentally built the most stealthy warship in human space just by using mismatched parts. Linda's biggest challenge was the power system. Every species in the galaxy had settled on 1 or 2 types of reactor technology. Fusion reactors were most common. Some advanced species used antimatter containment. A few experimental designs used zero-point energy extraction, but every ship used one consistent power source. Linda decided to use all of them. You want to run 17 different types of reactors on the same ship? One of her engineers asked. His name was Peter Grant, and he looked at Linda like she had lost her mind. Chief, those systems are not compatible. They operate at different power levels, different frequencies, different everything. If we try to connect them, the whole thing could explode. Linda pulled up her design schematics on the main screen. Look, we do not connect them directly. We use a distribution network. Think of it like a power grid. Each reactor feeds into the network at its own frequency, and the network converts everything to a standard output. Yes, it is complicated. Yes, it is inefficient. But you know what else it is? Redundant. If we lose 5 reactors, we still have 12. If we lose 10, we still have 7. And when everything is running at full power, we generate 3 times as much energy as a Council dreadnought. Peter studied the designs. Slowly, his expression changed from doubt to amazement. This is insane, but I think it might work. If we can actually build the distribution network. We can build it, Linda said with confidence. We just need to stop thinking like normal engineers and start thinking like humans who have no other choice. The weapons systems presented a different challenge. Carl Bennett walked through the weapons deck with Jake, explaining his plans. The space was huge, running most of the length of the ship. Workers were installing mounting brackets and power conduits. The galaxy settled on energy weapons a long time ago, Carl explained. Plasma cannons, particle beams, things like that. They are good weapons. Clean, efficient, unlimited ammunition as long as you have power. But they have weaknesses. Plasma dissipates over distance. It loses energy. Particle beams scatter. And shields are specifically designed to stop energy weapons. Jake nodded. So we use something different. Carl's face lit up with enthusiasm. Exactly. We go old school, railguns. The principle is simple. You use magnetic fields to accelerate a projectile. The longer the acceleration chamber, the faster the projectile goes. And you know what? We have this entire ship as a potential acceleration chamber. He pointed to the center of the weapons deck. This is the main gun. It runs the entire length of the ship from bow to stern. When we fire it, every single reactor dumps power into the magnetic coils. We can launch a tungsten slug at about 30% of light speed. At that velocity, it does not matter what kind of shield the enemy has. The projectile will punch straight through. How many times can we fire it? Jake asked. Carl grimaced. That is the problem. Once, maybe twice if we are lucky. The power draw is enormous and the heat buildup is extreme. After we fire, we need at least 30 minutes to cool down and recharge. But Jake, one shot should be enough. The kinetic energy is phenomenal. We could split a dreadnought in half. The rest of the weapons were more practical. Dozens of smaller railguns mounted along the hull for broadside fire. Missile pods loaded with modified mining charges. Point defense lasers salvaged from destroyed stations. Even some experimental weapons that Carl was developing, like magnetic mines that could be dropped in space to create traps. The Council fights with elegance and precision, Carl said. We are going to fight with chaos and overwhelming firepower. They will not know what hit them. Sophie Chen spent her time working on the navigation and control systems. This was perhaps the most complicated challenge of all. The ship had computer systems from multiple species, each one using different programming languages and operating principles. Making them work together required a level of integration that bordered on artistic. The alien navigation systems are very precise, Sophie explained to Jake as she worked at her console. They can calculate jump coordinates to a tiny fraction of a decimal point. But they are also very rigid. They follow rules. They avoid danger. The computer will not let you jump into a gravity well, or navigate through an asteroid field at high speed, or do any of the crazy things that might actually win a battle. She pulled up her modified code on the screen. So I am building a hybrid system. I use the alien computers for the basic calculations, the heavy mathematical lifting. But the final decisions go through a human interface. My interface. I can override the safety protocols. I can make this ship do things that alien pilots would consider suicidal. Is it dangerous? Jake asked. Sophie grinned. Incredibly dangerous, but also incredibly effective. In a battle, being unpredictable is an advantage. If the enemy cannot predict your movements, they cannot target you effectively. Months passed. The ship slowly took shape. What emerged from the construction bay looked like no other vessel in the galaxy. The hull was angular and aggressive, covered in mismatched armor panels. Weapons bristled from every surface. The engines were oversized and powerful, salvaged from a Velcrin destroyer and modified to accept human fuel systems. Jake walked through the completed ship with his core team. They started at the bridge, a circular room with stations for navigation, weapons, engineering, and command. The view screens showed the construction bay outside. Then they moved through the crew quarters, the engineering decks, the weapons bays, and finally the massive engine room. She is beautiful, Linda said, looking at the 17 reactors humming in perfect synchronization, in a ugly thrown-together should-not-work kind of way. Carl ran his hand along one of the railgun barrels. She is mean. That is what she is. Mean and ready to hurt someone? Sophie sat at the navigation station on the bridge and ran through her control interface. She flies like a dream. Well, like a violent, dangerous dream. But still a dream. Kate looked around at everything. We still need a name. We cannot just call her the ship. What do we name something like this? Jake thought about it. He thought about Earth, battered and bleeding but still standing. He thought about the council that had abandoned them. He thought about building something from nothing, using scraps and determination. He thought about refusing to surrender even when defeat looked certain. The Defiant, he said. We call her the Defiant. Because that is what we are. Defiant in the face of everyone who said we could not do this. Defiant against the Velcrin who want to destroy us. Defiant against a galaxy that left us to die. Linda nodded slowly. The Defiant, I like it. It fits, Carl smiled. When do we take her out? Jake looked at the tactical displays. Intelligence reports showed Velcrin activity increasing along the border. Raids were becoming more frequent. Something big was building. Soon, very soon. We need to run tests, make sure everything works. But after that, we show the galaxy what humanity can build from scrap metal and stubbornness. Commander Jake Morrison floated through the massive orbital salvage yard above Earth. His magnetic boots clicked against the metal floor as he walked between mountains of broken starship parts. Twisted metal beams lay scattered everywhere. Damaged hull plates from dozens of different alien ships were stacked in messy piles. The place looked like a graveyard for spaceships. Jake stopped in front of a particularly large piece of wreckage. It was part of a Galactic Council battlecruiser, destroyed during the last Velcrin attack. The metal still had burn marks from plasma weapons. He ran his gloved hand across the surface and felt the strange texture of quantum steel, one of the strongest materials in the galaxy. Lieutenant Kate Palmer floated up beside him. She looked around at all the junk with doubt in her eyes. "Sir, this is crazy. You want to build a warship out of this trash? Most of this stuff is so damaged that even the aliens threw it away." Jake picked up a small control panel that had alien writing on it. The text was from a species called the Thorian Collective. They had abandoned Earth just like everyone else when the Velcrin Empire attacked. "That is exactly why this will work, Kate. Nobody expects us to do anything with this junk. The Galactic Council thinks we are going to come begging for their old cruisers. They think we will ask for their charity." Kate crossed her arms. "Maybe we should ask them. We lost almost our entire fleet in the war. 3 billion people died, Jake. We need help." Jake turned to face her. His expression was hard and determined. "We asked for help. We begged for it. And what did the Council do? They said Earth was not strategically important. They said protecting us would cost too many resources. They left us to die." The memory of that betrayal still burned in Jake's chest. When the Velcrin came with their massive war fleet, every human colony had screamed for assistance. The Galactic Council, that great alliance of hundreds of alien species, had debated for weeks. By the time they decided to do nothing, entire planets had been destroyed. Kate's face softened. She had lost her brother in the first attack on Mars colony. "So what do? We only have maybe 8 or 9 working ships left. The Velcrin will come back. Everyone knows they will come back to finish the job." Jake gestured at the salvage yard around them. "We build something new, something they have never seen before. We take all this junk, all these incompatible parts from different species, and we make them work together. Humans are good at that. We have been doing it for thousands of years." Over the next few days, Jake assembled his team. He pulled people from all over Earth and the remaining colonies. These were not the best officers from fancy academies. Most of those officers had died in the war. These were the survivors, the ones who had kept fighting when everything looked hopeless. Chief Engineer Linda Hayes was the first person Jake recruited. Linda was 60 years old with gray hair and hands covered in old scars. She had spent 30 years building colony ships from whatever materials were available. During the war, she had kept the defense stations running with nothing but spare parts and determination. When Jake found her, she was living in a small apartment on Earth, supposedly retired. "Linda, I need you," Jake said when he visited her. Linda looked at him over her coffee cup. "I am too old for this, Jake. Let someone younger do it." Jake shook his head. "There is nobody younger who can do what you do. You once rebuilt an entire fusion reactor using parts from a mining ship and a food processor." "I saw it with my own eyes," Linda laughed. "It was a tired sound. That reactor exploded 3 days later. But it worked for 3 days. That is 3 days we would not have had. Linda, I'm not asking you to follow the rules. I am asking you to break every rule in the book. I need someone who can look at incompatible technology and make it compatible through sheer stubbornness." Linda studied Jake's face for a long moment. Then she sighed and put down her coffee. "What are you building?" "A warship. The most dangerous warship the galaxy has ever seen. And I am building it from scrap metal." A slow smile spread across Linda's face. "Now that sounds interesting." Next, Jake recruited Carl Bennett as his weapons specialist. Carl was a short, muscular man with a shaved head and intense eyes. He had been a mining engineer before the war. When the Velcrin attacked his colony, Carl had rigged industrial mining charges into bombs and destroyed 2 Velcrin landing ships. He had no formal military training, but he understood how to make things explode. "The Council uses plasma weapons and particle beams," Carl said when Jake explained the project. "Those are good weapons, but they have limits. Shields can absorb plasma. Particle beams lose power over distance." Jake nodded. "What would you use instead?" Carl's eyes lit up. "Railguns. Mass drivers. Good old kinetic energy. You take a chunk of metal and throw it really, really fast. No fancy energy weapons, just physics. A tungsten slug moving at a significant fraction of light speed will punch through anything. Shields do not stop solid matter very well." "The Council thinks kinetic weapons are primitive," Jake said. Carl grinned. The council is full of idiots. Primitive works just fine when you do it right. The third key member of the team was Sophie Chen, the navigator. Sophie was young, only 25. But she had a gift for spatial mathematics that bordered on supernatural. She could calculate jump coordinates in her head faster than most navigation computers. During the war, she had piloted a transport ship through an active battlefield, weaving between explosions and debris at speeds that made other pilots refuse to fly. "I can make your ship dance," Sophie said when Jake interviewed her. "The council ships fly in straight lines because their computer systems are too cautious. They follow safe patterns. But I can take us through asteroid fields, around planets, through radiation zones that their sensors cannot handle. I can make us impossible to predict." Jake looked at his team. An old engineer who broke rules, a mining expert who loved explosions, and a young genius who flew like she had no fear of death. It was not a traditional crew, but traditional crews followed traditional tactics, and traditional tactics had lost the war. "We have 6 months," Jake told them, at their first official meeting. They gathered in a small office overlooking the salvage yards. "The intelligence reports say the Velkrin are rebuilding their fleet. When they come back, they will bring enough ships to destroy Earth completely. We need to build something that can fight an entire battle fleet." Linda looked at the inventory lists on her datapad. "Jake, we have parts from 70 different species here. Most of these components are not designed to work together. Different power systems, different computer languages, different basic physics assumptions. This is going to be a nightmare. Can you do it?" Jake asked. Linda smiled that dangerous smile again. "I did not say I would not do it. I just said it would be a nightmare. Give me a team of good mechanics and I will make this junk sing." Carl was studying weapons specifications. "Most of these alien weapons are too damaged to use. But the materials are good. I can build human-style weapons using their metals and power sources. It will not be pretty, but it will work." Sophie was already sketching navigation plans. "If we build this thing the way I think you want to build it, it will handle like a fighter but hit like a battleship. That is going to confuse the hell out of enemy targeting systems." Jake looked out at the salvage yard. Somewhere in all that twisted metal and broken technology was a warship waiting to be born. A ship that would show the galaxy that humanity was not finished. A ship built from desperation and stubbornness and the refusal to give up. "Let us get to work," he said. "We have a galaxy to surprise." The Defiant floated in space above Earth, running system checks. Jake sat in the command chair on the bridge watching dozens of status displays. Everything showed green. The reactors were stable. Weapons were online. Navigation systems responded perfectly to Sophie's inputs. After 6 months of brutal construction work, they were finally ready for their first real flight. "All right, everyone listen up," Jake said over the ship-wide communication system. "This is supposed to be a simple shakedown cruise. 3 days in the outer system. Testing systems in a controlled environment. We are not looking for trouble. We are just making sure everything works the way Linda promised it would." Linda's voice came back through the speaker from the engineering deck. "Everything will work fine. Probably. Maybe. Just do not push all the reactors to full power at the same time unless you want to find out what the inside of a small sun looks like." The crew laughed nervously. There were 50 people aboard the Defiant, all volunteers who knew the ship was experimental and potentially dangerous, but they were also people who had nowhere else to go. Earth needed defenders, and this strange patchwork warship was the best hope humanity had. Sophie engaged the engines. The Defiant moved away from Earth orbit smoothly. The salvaged Velkrin engines pushed them forward with steady acceleration. Everything felt solid and responsive. Maybe this would actually work. They were 2 hours into the flight when everything changed. "Sir, I am picking up a distress call," Kate said from her station. Her fingers flew across the controls as she analyzed the signal. "It is coming from Europa Station. The automated beacon just activated. That means they are under attack." Jake's stomach dropped. Europa Station was humanity's largest mining colony in the Jupiter system. 15,000 people lived there, processing ice and minerals from Jupiter's moons. It was also far from any military protection. After the war, Earth had no ships to spare for patrol duty. "Can you identify the attackers?" Jake asked. Kate worked her controls. Her face went pale. "Velkrin raiders. I count at least 8 ships. No, wait, more are appearing. 12 ships, 15. Sir, there is a Velkrin carrier sitting back from the battle. This is not just a raid. This is an invasion force." The bridge went silent. Everyone knew what this meant. If the Velcrin took Europa Station, they would have a forward base in human territory. They could strike at Earth itself whenever they wanted. But the Defiant was untested. They had no idea if their weapons would work in real combat. This was supposed to be a test flight, not a battle. Jake made his decision in seconds. Battle stations. Sophie, plot a jump to Europa. Carl, bring all weapons online. Kate, send a message to Earth Command. Tell them what is happening and that we are engaging. Sophie turned in her chair. Sir, we have not tested the jump drive yet. If something goes wrong, we could end up scattered across a light year of space. Then do not let something go wrong, Jake said. How fast can you get us there? Sophie's hands danced across her navigation console. 3 minutes if I push it. But that means jumping into the middle of an active battle with no time to assess the situation. Do it. The Defiant's engines flared bright blue. The jump drive built up power, drawing from all 17 reactors. Space twisted around the ship in a way that made human eyes hurt to look at. Then, with a flash of light, they were gone. They emerged from the jump right in the middle of chaos. Europa Station hung in space ahead of them, surrounded by burning wreckage. The defensive platforms were already destroyed. 2 Council patrol ships that had been in the area were drifting hulks, torn apart by Velcrin plasma fire. Velcrin raiders swarmed around the station like angry insects, firing on anything that moved. The civilian transports trying to evacuate people from the station did not stand a chance. As Jake watched, a Velcrin fighter destroyed an unarmed transport ship. Hundreds of lives ended in a flash of fire. 15 Velcrin raiders confirmed, Kate reported. Her voice was steady despite the chaos around them. The carrier is hanging back about 50,000 kilometers. It is launching more fighters. The Velcrin noticed the Defiant immediately. Their tactical computers analyzed the new arrival, trying to identify what kind of ship it was. The computers could not figure it out. The Defiant's confused sensor signature did not match anything in their database. For a moment, both sides just stared at each other across the darkness of space. Then Jake gave the order that would change everything. All weapons fire at will. Carl had been waiting for this moment for 6 months. His fingers stabbed at the weapons controls. Every railgun on the Defiant fired at once. Tungsten slugs accelerated to a significant fraction of light speed and tore across space. The kinetic barrage hit the Velcrin formation like a hammer. Velcrin shields were designed to absorb energy weapons. They could disperse plasma and deflect particle beams. But solid projectiles moving at relativistic speeds were something different. The shields barely slowed the tungsten slugs down. The first 3 Velcrin raiders simply exploded as the kinetic projectiles punched through them. The missile pods opened. Hundreds of modified mining charges launched into space, each one a simple explosive with just enough guidance to find a target. They swarmed toward the Velcrin ships like angry bees. The raiders tried to shoot them down, but there were too many. Explosions blossomed across the Velcrin formation. Point defense grid active, Carl announced. The salvaged laser weapons came online, creating a web of destruction around the Defiant. Any Velcrin missile or fighter that got too close was immediately shredded by multiple laser strikes. The Velcrin scattered. Their formation broke apart as the raiders tried to evade the human ship's weapons. They had been expecting an easy target, maybe another Council patrol ship to destroy. Instead, they had run into something that fought like nothing they had ever seen before. 3 raiders down, Kate reported.
4 or 5, the rest are regrouping.
Sir, they are all focusing on us now. Plasma bolts and particle beams lanced through space toward the Defiant. Sophie was ready for them. Her hands moved across the navigation controls with inhuman speed. The Defiant twisted and dove, moving in ways that made the artificial gravity system struggle to keep up. She threaded the ship through the incoming fire, using debris from destroyed ships as cover, always moving, never staying in one place long enough to be targeted. They cannot hit what they cannot predict, Sophie said with fierce joy in her voice. Their targeting computers are trying to calculate our trajectory, but I am not following any pattern. More Velcrin raiders exploded under the Defiant's fire. Carl coordinated the weapons with brutal efficiency. Railguns for long-range kills, missiles for area denial, point defense lasers for close combat. The Defiant danced through the battle, leaving destruction in its wake. But the Velcrin carrier was the real threat. The massive ship hung back from the battle, launching wave after wave of fighters. As long as the carrier was active, the Velcrin could keep sending ships. They would eventually overwhelm even the Defiant through sheer numbers. Carl, can we hit the carrier from here? Jake asked. Carl checked his displays. It is 50,000 kilometers away, too far for the railguns to be accurate. We would need to get closer and those fighters would tear us apart before we made it halfway. Jake looked at the tactical display. He thought about the main gun, the enormous railgun that ran the length of the entire ship. The weapon they had never tested, the weapon that might destroy the Defiant itself when they fired it. Linda, how much power can you give to the main gun? Jake asked over the communication system. There was a pause. Then Linda's voice came back, careful and serious. All of it, if you want. Every reactor dumps everything into the magnetic coils. But Jake, we have never tested it. The power levels are theoretical. We might punch a hole through that carrier, or we might blow ourselves up, or both. Jake watched another civilian transport explode. He thought about 15,000 people trapped on Europa Station waiting to die. He thought about Earth, still recovering from the last war. He thought about the council that had abandoned them, and the Velkrin who saw humanity as prey to be hunted. Do it, Jake ordered. Full power to the main gun. The bridge lights dimmed as every reactor on the Defiant channeled power to the weapon. The entire ship vibrated. Warning alarms sounded from multiple systems. The magnetic coils that ran through the center of the ship built up energy levels that made the metal glow white-hot. Firing solution locked, Carl said. His voice was tight with tension. Trajectory calculated. One shot, sir. Make it count. Fire, Jake said. The universe seemed to hold its breath. Then the Defiant fired her main weapon for the first time. The magnetic coils released all their stored energy at once. A tungsten slug weighing several tons accelerated down the length of the ship, reaching 30% of light speed in less than a second. The electromagnetic pulse from the firing was so intense that every sensor in the system registered it. The projectile crossed 50,000 kilometers of space in just over half a second. The Velkrin carrier detected it coming, but there was no time to react. The slug hit the carrier's bow, punched through 2 kilometers of warship like it was paper, and emerged from the stern in a spray of superheated metal and fusion fire. The carrier's reactors lost containment. The massive ship broke in half, and news of the battle at Europa Station spread through human space within hours. By the next day, every colony had heard the story. A single human warship built from salvaged junk had destroyed 15 Velkrin raiders and a carrier. People who had been living in fear suddenly had hope again. Earth was not defenseless. Humanity could fight back. The story spread beyond human space, too. Traders carried the news to alien ports. Diplomats whispered about it in council chambers. Military analysts across the galaxy requested the battle recordings, trying to understand what had happened. The impossible ship that should not exist had won a battle it should not have survived. Jake stood in his quarters aboard the Defiant, reading message after message on his datapad. Interview requests from news organizations. Questions from military commanders. Congratulations from people he had never met. The attention was overwhelming and uncomfortable. He was not a hero. He was just a man who had built a ship because there was no other choice. Kate knocked on his door and entered without waiting for permission. She looked exhausted. None of them had slept much since the battle. Sir, you need to see this. Ambassador Gregory Walsh is speaking before the Galactic Council right now. He is talking about us, about the Defiant. Jake followed Kate to the bridge. The main view screen showed the council chamber, that massive amphitheater where representatives from hundreds of alien species gathered. Gregory Walsh stood in the center, a small human figure surrounded by aliens who towered over him. Gregory was a career diplomat, a man who had spent decades trying to make the galaxy take humanity seriously. Usually nobody listened to him. Today was different. Today everyone was listening. An alien counselor was speaking, its words translated into flat mechanical English. The counselor belonged to a species called the Thexian Dominion. They looked like large insects with multiple arms and faceted eyes. The vessel you deployed at Europa Station violates 17 separate accords on weapon system integration. It is built from salvaged components that you had no legal right to possess. The ship itself is a hazard to navigation and a threat to peaceful commerce throughout this sector. Gregory smiled coldly. Jake had never seen that expression on the diplomat's face before. It was the smile of someone who had been pushed too far and was done being polite. Interesting, Gregory said. His voice was calm but hard as steel. When the Velkrin Empire attacked our world 3 years ago, when they killed 3 billion humans, when they destroyed our colonies and murdered our children, The council found no violations worth addressing. You debated for weeks while we burned. You formed committees to study the situation while we died. And in the end you decided that Earth was not strategically important enough to defend. The chamber erupted in clicking, buzzing, and other alien sounds. The translation system struggled to keep up. Gregory waited for silence, then continued. Now that we have defended one of our own colonies, now that we have proven we can fight back, suddenly you are concerned about accords. Suddenly you care about regulations. Where were these concerns when we needed you? Another counselor spoke up. This one was from the Zentari Republic, a species that looked like tall, thin humanoids with blue skin. Your ship is built from components salvaged from battle sites. From our ships. From council vessels that died defending this sector. You took our technology without permission. Abandoned technology, Gregory corrected sharply. Left in Earth's orbital space after battles that you refused to help us fight. We filed salvage claims according to your own laws. We followed every regulation in your books. What we built from those salvaged materials is our own business. Or are you now claiming that humans are not intelligent enough to build our own ships? The Zentari counselor's skin flushed darker blue, a sign of anger in their species. Your weapons are unregulated. Your tactics are unpredictable. Your ship does not follow standard combat protocols. You are dangerous. Gregory's smile grew wider. Yes, we are dangerous. That is the whole point. The Velcrin understand now. They will think twice before attacking another human colony. And perhaps, just perhaps, the Council will think twice before abandoning another member species to die alone. Jake watched the exchange with growing satisfaction. For years, Gregory had been diplomatic and careful, always trying not to offend the Council. But something had changed. Humanity had changed. They were not begging for help anymore. They were taking care of themselves. The Council session continued for hours, but the result was already clear. Some species saw the Defiant as a threat to the established order. Others recognized it as a potential ally against Velcrin aggression. And a few, the ones who paid attention, realized that humanity had just proven something important. Desperation and creativity could overcome technological superiority. Meanwhile, Jake had bigger problems. The Defiant was famous now. Everyone wanted to know how it had been built. Other human nations demanded the specifications. They wanted to build their own version of the ship. But Jake knew the truth. The Defiant worked because of the people who built it, not because of some miracle design. Linda's ability to make incompatible systems cooperate, Carl's understanding of kinetic weapons, Sophie's gift for navigation. Those could not be copied from blueprints. Linda called a meeting of the senior crew. They gathered in the small conference room near the bridge. We have a problem, Linda said without preamble. Intelligence reports indicate the Velcrin are massing a fleet. A real fleet, not just raiders. They are gathering every warship they can pull from their border defenses. This is going to be a major assault. Carl pulled up tactical displays. Current estimates put it at 50 to 70 warships. At least 2 dreadnoughts. Multiple carriers. They are not messing around this time. They want revenge for what we did at Europa. When? Jake asked. 3 months, Linda said. Her expression was grim. Maybe 4 if we are lucky. And the Council is doing what the Council always does. Talking, debating, forming committees to study whether they should respond. By the time they make a decision, Earth could be destroyed. Kate looked around the table. We need more ships. The Defiant proved the concept works, but we cannot defend Earth with just 1 vessel. How many are under construction? 5, Linda answered. 5 more hulls using the same basic principles. But even with round-the-clock work, we need at least 6 months to get even 1 more ship combat ready. We do not have that much time. Sophie had been quiet, but now she spoke up. What about the Council forces? Some of them must be willing to help. After Gregory's speech, after seeing what we can do, some species must be reconsidering their position. Maybe, Jake said. But maybe is not good enough. We need to operate on the assumption that we are alone. That has worked for us so far. The meeting broke up with no good solutions. Jake walked through the ship, checking on the crew and the repairs. The battle at Europa had damaged several systems. Nothing critical, but enough to need attention. The crew worked with quiet determination, making fixes and improvements. They knew another battle was coming. Word came 2 days later. A Council task force was forming. 12 warships from various species who had decided that Velcrin aggression had gone too far. It was not the massive fleet that humanity needed. But it was help. Actual help. For the first time since the war began. Jake received a message from the task force commander, an alien named Vrex from a warrior species called the Korvathi. Commander Morrison, we have studied your battle recordings. Your tactics are crude but effective. Your ship is ugly but functional. We would be honored to fight alongside you when the Velkrin come. It was the closest thing to a compliment that most aliens ever gave humans. Jake smiled as he recorded his response. Commander Vrex, we would be honored to fight alongside you as well. Just try to keep up. Our ship does not always follow the standard combat protocols. Vrex's reply came back quickly. We noticed. That is why we want to fight with you instead of against you. The Defiant returned to Earth orbit for repairs and resupply. Jake watched his homeworld turn slowly beneath them. It looked peaceful and blue and beautiful. 3 billion people had died defending it. Millions more lived in constant fear that the Velkrin would return. But they were still here, still fighting, still refusing to surrender. What are you thinking about? Kate asked, floating up beside him in the observation deck. I am thinking about what we built, Jake said. Not just the ship, but the idea behind it. We took things that everyone else threw away and made something powerful from them. We did not have the best technology or the most resources. We just had determination and the refusal to give up. Kate nodded. The galaxy is going to learn that lesson. Other species are already talking about building ships like ours. Mixing technologies, breaking rules, taking risks. Good, Jake said. The galaxy has been stagnant for too long. Everyone follows the same patterns, uses the same tactics. The Velkrin have been winning because they are willing to be brutal and unpredictable. Well, now humanity is going to show them what unpredictable really means. 3 months passed in a blur of preparation. More weapons were installed on the Defiant. The reactors were tuned and optimized. The crew drilled constantly, practicing battle scenarios and emergency procedures. The Council task force arrived and began coordination exercises. 12. The Velkrin fleet hung at the edge of the solar system like a dark storm waiting to break. Jake watched the tactical display on the main view screen. 63 enemy warships in a formation that stretched across thousands of kilometers of space. The 2 dreadnoughts anchored the center, each one a mountain of weapons and armor. Carrier groups on the flanks were already launching fighters. Smaller destroyers and cruisers formed a screen around the capital ships. It was overwhelming. It was designed to be overwhelming. The Velkrin wanted humanity to see this fleet in despair. They wanted Earth to surrender without a fight. Evacuation status? Jake asked. Kate checked her displays. 70% of the civilian population has reached the underground shelters. Transport ships are moving the rest as fast as they can. But sir, if the Velkrin get past us and reach Earth orbit, those shelters will not matter. They can just bombard the planet until nothing lives. Then we do not let them past us, Jake said simply. The Defiant floated alone between the Velkrin fleet and Earth. Behind them, the 12 Council warships formed a defensive line. It was not enough. Everyone knew it was not enough. Simple mathematics said that 13 ships could not defeat 63. But mathematics had never accounted for human stubbornness. Commander Vrex's voice came through the communication channel. The Korvathi warrior sounded calm and ready. Commander Morrison, we have analyzed the enemy formation. Their dreadnoughts are the key. If we can damage or destroy them, the rest of the fleet may lose morale and withdraw. But those ships have extremely heavy armor and shields. Our weapons will take a long time to penetrate. Our main gun can punch through them, Jake said. But we only get 1 shot before we need to recharge. And getting close enough for an accurate shot means going through their entire fleet. Then that is what we must do, Vrex said. The Council ships will engage the flanks and draw off as many enemies as we can. You take the Defiant straight through the center. Make your shot count, Jake looked at his crew. They knew what this meant. The Defiant would be flying directly into the teeth of the enemy formation. Every Velkrin ship would be shooting at them. The odds of survival were effectively 0. But if they could destroy a dreadnought, if they could hurt the enemy badly enough, maybe the evacuation transports would have time to get everyone to safety. Anyone who wants to transfer to a Council ship can do so now, Jake said over the ship-wide channel. No shame in it. This is going to be dangerous even by our standards. Not a single person left their station. The crew of the Defiant had known from the beginning that they were probably going to die fighting. At least they would die doing something important. All right then, Jake said. Sophie, plot us a course straight through their formation to the lead dreadnought. Carl, I want continuous fire from all weapons. Do not stop shooting for any reason. Linda, keep those reactors running no matter what damage we take. Everyone ready? Let us show these bastards why you do not mess with Earth. The Defiant's engines flared to full power. The ship accelerated toward the Velcrin fleet like a missile. Behind them, the Council warships split into two groups and angled toward the enemy flanks. The battle for Earth had begun. The Velcrin opened fire when the Defiant was still 100,000 kilometers away. Plasma bolts filled space with deadly light. Particle beams reached out to tear into human metal. Missiles launched in swarms, each one locked onto the strange ship that was charging straight at them. Sophie's hands danced across her controls. The Defiant twisted and turned, moving through the incoming fire like water flowing around rocks. She used every trick she had learned, every crazy maneuver that normal navigation computers would refuse to attempt. The ship dove toward a cluster of debris, using it for cover, shot up through the plane of the ecliptic, coming at the enemy from an unexpected angle, spun along its axis to present fresh armor to incoming fire while damaged sections cooled. Carl unleashed everything the Defiant had. Railguns fired continuously, tungsten slugs tearing through space, missiles launched in waves, forcing the Velcrin to split their attention between shooting down projectiles and tracking the Defiant. The point defense grid became a sphere of destruction around the ship, lasers cutting down anything that got too close. The first Velcrin destroyer exploded as railgun fire punched through its reactor. Then a cruiser died to a missile swarm that overwhelmed its defenses. But the Defiant was taking damage too. Hull plates vaporized under plasma fire. A missile got through the point defense and exploded against the starboard side. Alarms shrieked across the bridge. Hull breach on Deck 7, Kate reported. Emergency bulkheads holding. Reactor 3 is offline. Reactor 9 is overheating. Reroute power through the backup conduits. Linda's voice came from engineering. Shut down Reactor 9 and dump the heat. We can manage on 15 reactors. The Defiant pushed deeper into the enemy formation. They were surrounded now, Velcrin ships on all sides. Plasma and particle beams created a killing zone that nothing should survive. But Sophie kept them moving, kept them unpredictable. And Carl kept firing, every weapon spitting death in all directions. A Velcrin carrier launched fighters directly into their path. Sophie did not try to evade. Instead, she accelerated straight toward them. The point defense grid went into overdrive, shooting down fighters as fast as they appeared. The ones that survived the lasers ran directly into the Defiant's hull. The impacts shook the ship but did not slow it down. Human engineering was crude, but it was tough. Lead dreadnought is 10,000 kilometers ahead, Kate announced. They know we are coming for them. Shields at maximum, weapons charged. Sir, they are rotating to bring their main guns to bear on us. Jake could see the dreadnought on the view screen now. It was enormous, bigger than anything humanity had ever built. Its hull was smooth and elegant, covered in weapon batteries. The shields shimmered with power. It was a monument to Velcrin military might designed to break the will of anyone who saw it. But Jake just saw a target. Linda, charge the main gun, he ordered. Everything we have. Strip power from life support if you need to. Carl, once we fire the main gun, I want every other weapon targeting that dreadnought. We only get one pass at this. Make it count. The bridge lights dimmed to almost nothing. The artificial gravity stuttered. Air circulation stopped. Every single reactor on the Defiant channeled power to the massive railgun that ran through the heart of the ship. The magnetic coils glowed white-hot. The metal around them started to deform from the heat. Warning alarms filled the air. Firing solution locked, Carl said. His voice was steady despite the chaos. Wait for it, wait now, sir. Fire now. Fire, Jake said. The Defiant fired its main weapon for the second time. The electromagnetic pulse was even stronger than before, so powerful that it temporarily disabled the sensors of every ship nearby. The tungsten slug launched down the acceleration tunnel at 32% of light speed, slightly faster than the test at Europa because Linda had pushed the reactors past their safety limits. The projectile crossed the distance in a fraction of a second. The Velcrin dreadnought's shields tried to stop it and failed. The slug hit the dreadnought's shields, punched through them like tissue paper, and kept going. It struck the massive ship dead center, drilling through armor and structure and machinery. The dreadnought had kilometers of defensive layers, redundant systems, blast doors, all designed to survive anything. It was not enough. The kinetic energy was simply too enormous. The projectile passed completely through the dreadnought and emerged from the other side, trailing a stream of vaporized metal and burning atmosphere. Behind it, the massive ship began to tear itself apart. Secondary explosions rippled through the hull. The reactor containment failed. The dreadnought broke into 3 large pieces, each one tumbling away, trailing fire and debris. The Velcrin fleet faltered. Their formation wavered. Ships stopped advancing and started maneuvering defensively. The dreadnought had been the symbol of their power, the guarantee of their victory. Watching it die to a single shot from a human ship shook their confidence to the core. "Hit them now while they are confused," Jake ordered. "All weapons free, fire at will." The Defiant, battered and damaged but still fighting, tore into the scattered Velcrin formation. The Council ships pressed their attack on the flanks. Suddenly, the battle shifted from a massacre into a real fight. But the Defiant had taken too much damage. Hull breaches on multiple decks, 5 reactors offline. The main gun was burned out and would never fire again, and the second dreadnought was turning toward them, angry and looking for revenge. "Sir, we cannot take another pass like that," Kate said. "We are holding together by luck and Linda's stubbornness, but one more major hit will finish us." Jake watched the tactical display. The Velcrin were regrouping. They had lost their lead dreadnought and maybe 20 other ships, but they still had overwhelming numbers. The battle was far from over. Earth was still in danger. Then Sophie said something that changed everything. "Sir, I am picking up new contacts. Multiple ships dropping out of jump space. They are not Velcrin signatures. I think they are Council ships." The view screen updated. Dozens of new contacts appeared on the tactical display. 20 warships, 30, 40. Council vessels from a dozen different species jumping. The Defiant drifted in Earth orbit, surrounded by repair ships and rescue shuttles. Jake walked through the damaged corridors, surveying what the battle had done to his ship. Hull breaches sealed with emergency patches. Entire sections open to vacuum. Scorch marks everywhere from plasma impacts. 5 reactors completely destroyed. The main gun was a twisted wreck that would never fire again. It was a miracle they had survived at all. In the medical bay, doctors treated the wounded. 17 crew members had died in the battle. Another 32 were injured. Jake visited each person, thanking them for their sacrifice. Some were unconscious. Others grabbed his hand and told him it had been worth it. They had saved Earth. They had proven that humanity could stand against anyone. Linda Hayes stood in the engineering section, looking at the wreckage of her beautiful reactor network. Tears ran down her face, but she was smiling. "We pushed them too hard," she said when Jake approached. "I knew we would. But they performed perfectly anyway. Every single reactor gave us everything they had. I am so proud of this stupid, impossible ship." Carl Bennett was in the weapons bay, already planning repairs and upgrades. "The railguns held up better than I expected," he told Jake. "We can rebuild most of them. The main gun, though, that is finished. We would need to basically rebuild the entire ship to mount another one. But you know what? We proved the concept works. Every military in the galaxy is going to be studying what we did here." Sophie Chen sat at her navigation station, exhausted but satisfied. "We flew through hell and came out the other side," she said quietly. "I made that ship dance. I made her do things that should have torn her apart. And she held together because she was built by people who refused to give up." Kate Palmer was on the bridge, coordinating with Earth Command and the Council fleet. She looked up when Jake entered. "Sir, you need to hear this. The Council is calling an emergency session. They want to discuss the Velcrin threat and humanity's role in galactic defense. Ambassador Gregory says this is unprecedented. The Council never acts this fast." Jake settled into his command chair. It felt strange to sit there after the battle. He was still alive, which felt like cheating fate. His ship was still flying, which felt like magic. Earth was still intact, which felt like a miracle. But they had done it. Against all odds, they had won. The view screen activated, showing the Council chamber. This time, the amphitheater was packed. Every species had sent representatives. Everyone wanted to witness what happened next. Ambassador Gregory stood in the center again, but he was not alone. Commander Vreck stood beside him, along with representatives from 5 other species that had fought in the battle. Counselor Thex, the insect-like alien who had criticized the Defiant before, spoke first. His tone was different now, respectful. "Commander Morrison, on behalf of the Thexian Dominion, I offer our formal apology. We questioned your methods. We doubted your ship. We were wrong. Your vessel and your crew saved countless lives today. We are in your debt." Other counselors echoed the sentiment. The ones who had mocked humanity's crude technology now praised their innovation. The ones who had called the Defiant dangerous now called it effective. The ones who had said humans should follow established protocols now said humanity's unpredictability was an asset. Jake listened to it all with mixed feelings. He was glad they were finally taking humanity seriously, but he also remembered the 3 billion who had died while the council debated. He remembered the colonies that had burned while aliens talked about strategic importance. Respect earned through violence was still respect, but it left a bitter taste. The council recognizes that the Velcrin threat requires a unified response, another counselor announced. We propose the formation of a joint defense force, multiple species working together, sharing technology and tactics, and we believe humanity should play a central role in this force. Your unconventional approaches have proven highly effective. Gregory smiled. The council is very generous. But let us be clear about something. 3 years ago, when the Velcrin attacked Earth, we begged for this kind of cooperation. We pleaded for help, and we were told that our problems were not the council's concern. Now, after we have saved ourselves, after we have built weapons from scrap metal and won battles we should have lost, suddenly you want to work together. Can you understand why we might be skeptical? The chamber went silent. No one had expected Gregory to be so blunt. Humans were supposed to be grateful for any attention from the council. They were supposed to know their place in the galactic hierarchy. But humanity's place had changed. The Defiant had changed it. You are right to be skeptical, Vrex said, stepping forward. The Korvathi warrior's voice was strong and honest. The council failed you. We failed you. Many species, including mine, argued that Earth should be defended. But we were outvoted by those who saw no profit in helping a minor species. That was wrong. Morally wrong and strategically foolish. The Velcrin saw our division and exploited it. They knew they could attack the weak while the strong did nothing. Vrex turned to address the entire council. But Commander Morrison and his crew have taught us something important. They have shown that innovation matters more than raw power, that determination can overcome technological superiority, that the so-called minor species might have lessons to teach us. If we are wise, we will learn those lessons. If we are fools, we will go back to our old ways and wonder why the Velcrin keep winning. The council chamber erupted in discussion. Some species agreed with Vrex immediately. Others needed more convincing. But the tone had shifted. Humanity was no longer the primitive species to be ignored. They were the species that had built a warship from junk and changed the course of a war. Back on the Defiant, Jake watched the debate with satisfaction. But his mind was already on the future. The ship needed massive repairs. The crew needed rest and reinforcement. And most importantly, Earth needed more ships like the Defiant. The victory had bought them time, but the Velcrin would regroup eventually. They always did. Linda joined him on the bridge. The shipyards are already working on the other 5 hulls. With the resources the council is offering now, we can finish them in 3 months instead of 6. And Jake, other species are asking for our design specifications. They want to build their own versions. Can you imagine? Aliens copying human engineering, Jake laughed. Give them the plans. Let everyone build whatever they want. The more ships we have, the safer everyone is. The Velcrin have relied on overwhelming force for too long. Time to show them that numbers are not everything. Over the next few weeks, representatives from dozens of species visited the Defiant. They wanted to see the ship that had changed the war. Engineers studied the reactor network, trying to understand how 17 incompatible systems could work together. Weapons experts examined the railguns and kinetic kill systems. Pilots talked to Sophie, wanting to learn her navigation techniques. Some aliens were openly skeptical. They looked at the mismatched hull plating and the crude welds and questioned how this could be effective. But others understood immediately. They saw that the Defiant's strength came not from perfect engineering, but from creative problem-solving. From taking what you had and making it work, rather than waiting for what you needed. The crew of the Defiant became celebrities across human space. Everywhere Jake went, people wanted to thank him. Children drew pictures of the ship. News programs ran constant updates. Politicians gave speeches about human resilience and determination. It was overwhelming and uncomfortable, but Jake understood why it mattered. People needed heroes. They needed to believe that survival was possible. Kate found Jake in the observation deck one evening, looking down at Earth. The planet had lights on the night side now, cities rebuilding and growing again. It was beautiful. They are calling us the ship that saved the galaxy, Kate said. Is that too much? We just saved Earth, Jake thought about it. Maybe we did more than that. The galaxy had rules about how ships should be built and how wars should be fought. Everyone followed those rules because that was how things had always been done. The Velcrin knew the rules and used them to their advantage. But we broke the rules. We showed everyone that there are other ways to fight. Other ways to survive. Maybe that does save the galaxy in a way, by proving that change is possible. Sophie and Carl and Linda joined them in the observation deck. The core crew that had built something impossible and made it work. They stood together in silence, watching Earth turn beneath them. What happens next? Sophie asked. The Defiant is a wreck. It will take months to repair her fully. Do we just wait? No, Jake said. We build more ships. Better ships. We take what we learned and improve on it. The Defiant was built from desperation and scrap metal. The next generation can be built from knowledge and resources. But they will still carry the same spirit. Human stubbornness, human creativity, human refusal to surrender even when everything looks hopeless. Linda smiled. You know what the best part is? We did not just build a warship. We built proof that humanity belongs in the galaxy, that we can stand as equals with species that have been traveling the stars for thousands of years. We took their discarded junk and forged it into something they feared. From scrap metal, Carl said, we built the most lethal warship in the world.